As you all know, I've spoken about the SAG AFTRA, a union of voice actors who have just declared a strike the other day, and we've pretty much only heard from SAG AFTRA's point of view. But now we have some responses from a group representing publishers such as EA, Activision and Take-Two, and they have called out the union for its undemocratic approach to negotiations. Now, according to this statement, the companies did everything they could to strike a deal with the actors before the strike took place, and according to their statement, they offered a quote money package almost identical to SAG AFTRA's last demand. And apparently they said that SAG AFTRA leaders should at least let the actors decide if the offer meets their demands. And a bit of a statement here from Scott J. Whitlin, a member of the company's legal team at Barnes and Thornburg, and he said, quote, "We believe SAG AFTRA performance should be allowed to look at what we offered and compare it to the union's last demand and see what terminology and other minimal differences are not worth striking over. The strike is going to hurt the SAG AFTRA performers that these companies value." What's really interesting, however, is that we also have some comments from the former Infinity Ward creative strategist Robert Bowling, who wrote an essay calling for similar rights that the union was, transparency and secondary compensation. Now, he pointed out that the additional or discretionary pay can sometimes be tied to the average score instead of sales. For example, a game can do really well in terms of the money made, but if it gets critically panned, those involved who sign contracts promising discretionary pay wouldn't receive it. Now, of course, we've seen this accusation, or this problem, should I say, raising its head before, with the problems of Metacritic scores and companies being denied bonuses or something like that for really good work because you got a 69 Metacritic score instead of a 70 or whatever, and tying rewards and punishing people for not reaching a certain Metacritic score or what have you is of course absolutely ridiculous. And he said, quotes, "The problem with this is that despite the game being undisputed financial success and generating amazing revenue and profits, you are now entitled to none of it because a series of subjective opinions about the game concluded it wasn't within the top 10% of video games. If they're making money off your work, so should you." And to be honest, that seems a fair comment to make. Now, as I discussed in my previous video, part of SAG AFTRA's negotiations did include additional pay for every 2 million copies of a game sold. Now, the law firm representing the various publishers didn't exactly come out and say explicitly that they will be offering additional pay for those copies, but they did say it offered a, quote, additional compensation to performers of up to $950 per game based upon the number of sessions a performer works on a particular game, and they also offered an immediate 9% increase in wage, but this offer was of course rejected by SAG AFTRA. Now, it is interesting here that the publishers keep bringing up the point of money. However, money is not SAG AFTRA's only demand, as I've of course discussed before. One of their concerns is, of course, health and safety. You might scoff and say, oh, voice acting is such a dangerous profession. Well, no, it's not dangerous in the same way that, say, working in a factory is dangerous, but there are still such things as unsafe working conditions. Say, for example, someone like myself who uses their voice a lot, and obviously I'm not a voice actor, but let's just say I was, and I'm being asked to do things like, say, for example, shouting for hours on ends, you know, screaming a lot, doing things that are putting stress on my vocal cords. That is against health and safety because, well, that's my livelihood that you're damaging by asking me to work in this particular way, which is unsafe for this thing that I need to do my job. So basically, SAG AFTRA also wanted to limit the amount of time spent on these stressful vocal sessions. So basically, to limit the amount of permanent damage done to your voice. Obviously, if you shout for a living or whatever, it's going to do damage over time. But say if I only spend 1 hour a day doing the loud, shouty voices rather than, say, 8 hours a day, just for example, obviously pulling those numbers completely out of my arse, so do keep that in mind. It's obviously going to limit the damage to my voice a lot, and obviously mean that I can keep going for longer. And they're also asking for stunt coordinators for mocap, and basically have the same rules in place that are used on any advert, TV or film shoot, and basically just to have more care for not only the voice actors' voices, but also, you know, their physical well-being. If you're doing a stunt in mocap, there needs to be someone who knows what they're doing to make sure you're not going to hurt yourself. So, while the publishers are seemingly very keen to point this as a money issue, money is definitely a part of it, but it's not just that. So I suggest you take a look at both sides before commenting either way. However, there's an interesting article that Will Wheaton wrote, who should need no introduction, and he's written about why he supports SAG AFTRA strike authorization. So give that a read, and it'll give you a perspective from a voice actor who has obviously way more experience in the industry than myself. I'm not a voice actor, but here we go. Have a look. I suggest you give him a read. It's very interesting to get his perspective, but also interesting to see what the publishers have to say. Of course, it is a case of he said, she said, but it still is interesting to finally hear from them, other than just, you know, yeah, we don't like this. So yeah. Anyway, that's me done for this video. Gonna go around in circles a little bit there. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.